He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Te Māori moved many people to tears over its 2 years in the US. It had been hailed as a moving, haunting, spiritual experience. Critics wrote of the exhibition's power and beauty. It gave New Zealand what it craved: international attention. Now, in 1986, Te Māori was back home.
Very touchy seeing these artifacts. Orohana.
This time called Te Hukinga Mai, the return home. After its rapturous reception in the US, would New Zealanders care in the same way? Turns out they did.
One was duty-bound as a Māori to be here to see the Māori exhibition.
It was a record breaker for this country. No exhibition had ever been so well attended. But its popularity exasperated some.
We take it to America and they put it on the front page and make it famous in your eyes. So now that it's famous, you want to welcome it.
Te Māori had changed the game, obviously. But there was still so much to do, so much more to change. The kaumātua who had agreed to let their taonga head overseas had laid down a challenge. And one person in particular would be at the forefront of that response.
I've been most interested in what I've read about Te Māori, so I'm very delighted to have the opportunity of coming down to see it.
Kia ora, I'm Matariki Williams, and this is Pūtātara, Revolutions in Māori Art. Episode 3, Keeping Our Taonga Warm. After landing back home, the taonga went on a road trip. Te Hukinga Mai opened in Wellington in August 1986 at the Old Dominion Museum in an area known as the Māori Court.
The time now is 3:30 and a group has just been welcomed into the Māori courtyard, into the National Gallery in front of Te Haukitūranga. The feeling of people here today that it's a very good use of this courtyard to bring it back, to make it live again. Speakers are here lined up now to welcome visitors to the museum and then escorted into the main exhibition of Te Māori.
Groups had come from all around the country to welcome their taonga home.
At present, it's the Ngāti Toa elders who are occupying the paepae, delivering the orations of welcome. The women are there too with them to accompany them in song.
Just like in the US, Te Hukinga Mai drew huge crowds, and it would prove to be just as moving.
One stood in awe right through at the ceremony. Tauana mai te ihi, te wehi.
Rongo whakata kuia, Henny Sunderland.
Now this English language, for me, is inadequate when it comes to express how I feel. But when our Tongas went over to America, during that time, the impact they had made on those peoples and our people, and they coming back and sitting down with us and telling us how the Tongas, how they spoke to them in a way they never ever experienced. That too, I would say to you, was one of the reasons for me. Come what may, I was going to be here for this opening. You know, it drew one. Somehow, one felt one was duty-bound as a Māori to be here.
It drew large crowds of non-Māori too.
I've been most interested in what I've read about Te Māori, so I'm very delighted to have the opportunity of coming down to see it.
In magazines and newspapers, there were full-page ads. They showed Ngāti Porou Iranui Haig, draped in a kākahu, her hands resting across her chest, tears welling in her eyes. Next to her, in bold text, "What effect will Te Māori have on you?" At the opening was Dame Rangimarie Hetet, a tohunga raranga, a master weaver. She's 98 in this interview. She would live to be 103.
How do you feel right now, Rangimarie? How do you feel?
Well, I feel happy that I got here. Very nice. I've been enjoying it. Meeting a lot of people that I hadn't seen for many, many years. Very, very nice.
This early service this morning?
Very touchy seeing these artifacts. Orohana.
After Wellington, the exhibition went to Otago Museum in Dunedin, where it also drew record crowds. It did the same in Christchurch. In all the cities the exhibition showed in, rangatahi were trained to work as kaiarahi, guiding people around.
This is the Māori of the Māori exhibition. Kia ora koutou ai. It is the spirit, the life force of the entire exhibition. Yes, it is a pounamu greenstone, as you can see it. And it's from the Aotearoa River, Fiordlands down the South Island. When whānau Apanui heard of the musket raids, he had these dismantled and hidden in sea caves at Te Kaha. They were rediscovered around about 1912 and restored to its original pataka or storehouse. This particular carving was done around the Puhawaitanga period, 1500 to 1800, and is around about 400 to 500 years old. Any questions?
There were side events too. Hana Te Hemera, the student activist we heard from in episode 1, she organised fashion shows at each of the Te Hokinga Mai venues. Children bussed in from all over on school trips. It was more than an exhibition. It was Māori from across generations, sharing taonga and stories. It was history reaching into the present. In 1987, the tour reached Auckland for one last hurrah. Minister for Māori Affairs, Koro Wetere.
I would like to think that Te Māori was yet a new beginning. And I want to say very strongly that we should keep together on this matter, because from it, and in the last 3 years, has meant a renaissance in things Māori, not only for our people, but again for New Zealand.
More than 900,000 people saw Te Hokinga Mai. That's 28% of the population at the time. Te Hokinga Mai wrapped up on the 10th of September 1987, exactly 3 years after Te Māori had opened in New York. Hirini Mokomead was also intimately involved with Te Hokinga Mai. He reflected on his work and the legacy it may have.
I think the grandchildren have also been affected by Te Māori. I know my grandchild has. You know, she's aware of Te Māori, and she knows the names of quite a few of the Taonga. And true, it's up to them when they become adults and when they become the interpreters of life. They will know what the trends are at the moment as we look, as you and I talk. The long-term trends of just where we're heading are perhaps not as clear to us.
Douglas Newton was the chair of the Department of Primitive Art at the Met. We met him in the last episode when he was setting up the American tour of Te Māori. He spoke at the closing ceremony.
To my belief, one of the things that Te Māori showed to the American public, and perhaps is shown here, I don't know, is that a powerful tradition, a strong culture, can last forever against opposition and can, more than that, do its part to enrich the world of human beings. I will only say one thing more, and that is that for all of us who've been involved with Te Māori and who are here, this is in many ways a profoundly sad day. We realise that all the Taonga will go back to their homes, that we will never see them probably again in one place, and we will regret that very much. But they have come back. The past partly belongs to us. Their future belongs entirely to you.
And with that, 3 years of Te Māori was over. Te ariki o tū wharetoa, hepi te hiu hiu.
In thanking the government tonight, I also want to urge them to continue their support so that we can have a home for our taonga where they can be looked after and permanently displayed for everyone to appreciate and learn from. We must build on the success of Te Māori for the future of our country and our generation to come.
That's quite the wero. Te Māori had awoken an urge for reconnection, to find lost taonga, for museums to work differently, in partnership. Partnership was a bit of a buzzword in the late 80s. Te Hokinga Mai returned to an Aotearoa in the throes of transformation. In 1985, the Labour government changed the scope of the Waitangi Tribunal. That slight amendment and remit would prove to be huge. Since its establishment, the tribunal had only been allowed to look at contemporary claims, but now it was empowered to examine any alleged treaty breach dating back to 1840. That opened the path for iwi across the country to file a challenge, not only for land, but also other aspects of Māori life and ways of being. Not long after the change, Huirangi Waikirepuru filed a claim over the state of the Māori language.
Without English language, how can you express the thoughts of the people of that particular culture? I could imagine the uproar if, for instance, there was a decision to make Māori official and it became the language of instruction in all schools and the only broadcasting language. What would happen to a lot of people out in the community? I would believe that they would see it as an injustice. So this is the case with Māori language. It has a place, an indigenous right to be a part of everyday life in Aotearoa. This then makes it a responsibility of government and state according to the Treaty of Waitangi.
But this change to the tribunal came as the Labour government was swinging the axe through the country's economic foundations. State assets like mills, forests and railways were privatised left, right and centre, and jobs were being hemorrhaged in places where mostly Māori worked.
Names have been filtered through to us already of people who are beginning to feel the pinch and are in need. The feeling is getting a little anxious. We're not too sure. We feel it could be a long drawn-out affair.
But there was a pushback, much of it fronted by small, fledgling and poorly resourced runanga. In the south, Ngaitahu were litigating developments by the dozen. In the central North Island, government plans to sell forests, farms and fisheries were being challenged. Who gave them the right to sell things that weren't theirs? The Māori Council even took one case as far as the Court of Appeal, and they won. In 1987, Justice Cook gave a now famous ruling. The treaty had created an enduring partnership, he said. This drive for the treaty to be honoured wasn't reserved just to the government. Institutions were now facing a reckoning, including museums and galleries. Far from benevolent places, museums shaped stories, perceptions and history. And the process of Te Māori had made people ask tough questions of museums. Here is Ngāti no Ellis, a professor of art history at the University of Auckland.
We might have Māori art in London, or we might have it anywhere in the world, but it is important to bring home, I think, as much as we can. But some pieces need to be and are there with the aroha of the hapu whānau and iwi as a form of connecting into the local community. But then we think about some of the museums in Europe who just have a blanket, they will not repatriate anything but ancestral remains. And we have to have a moment there and think about what the bigger picture is, which is about control and power. And by releasing them home, then there is a floodgate going to open with everyone else also coming knocking. We think about how many are over there. It's so saddening when you look at some of them, and I meet some of them, and you think, you're never going on display. There are so many of them like that, and you think, why are they there then? What's the purpose of them being there?
Not long after Te Māori, the National Museum Council's annual report commented,
Te Māori has changed forever the perceived reasons for New Zealand museums to hold, study and display Māori objects.
Getting the Taonga for Te Māori involved new ways of thinking and working, and there was no desire to return to the status quo.
I was bored.
This is Mina Mackenzie. She's something of an understated legend in the museum community. She didn't train to be a curator. She just started showing up at the Manawatu Museum in the 1960s when she was a young mother. It had just opened and was little more than a house with some trinkets on Amesbury Street. After a while, she got offered a job. By 1978, she was running the place, the first wahine Māori to lead a museum. What she did for museums in Aotearoa was huge.
And I think that what we lack in our museums in New Zealand now is the strong Māori voice, a Māori voice that speaks in two ways. It speaks at a level with European academic voices, but at the same time it has its own quality and its own stance and its own viewpoint, and that is its Māori viewpoint that it brings. And so it's the presence of young Māori academic people who are also maybe academic in the Māori sense, who are able to bring us closer to an equal debate.
She took many people under her wing over the years. One of them was a Pākehā student, David Butts. He was just about to finish university.
So I saw a job come up at Manawatu Museum, and I thought, I'll go and see what that's like. It was in an old brick factory that had been repurposed as a museum. It looked really dungy from the outside. So my initial kind of feeling was, I don't know about this. I introduced myself to Mina and she started to talk to me. And she was so welcoming. She began to articulate her vision of what the museum could be. And what a wonderful thing it is to be able to work with collection. She painted the museum as an educational institute. She just had a way of drawing you into her vision of what this work was about. And she took me home and fed me, and we talked way into the night, and I came away from that first encounter with her thinking, I'd love to work with her.
Thus began a partnership that would last several years. In the 80s, Mina was appointed to the group who helped set up Te Māori, the only wahine on that committee. It was Mina who seized the challenge left after Te Māori.
One of the last meetings of the kaumātua after the return of the Te Māori exhibition, that they voiced concern about the treasures of New Zealand, the Taonga, that are still in overseas museums, because many of them had travelled with Te Māori and realised that there were quite a number of treasures still in Europe, in America, in England and various other parts of the world that we had not made contact with. And they expressed concern that it was when we were reunited with our Taonga, when Māori and the Taonga were reunited, then their full meaning was made manifest, as it was with the Te Māori exhibition.
There are thousands upon thousands of Taonga in museums around the world, and frankly, they weren't being well looked after. Maina had an idea. She wanted curators and executives from around the world to come to Aotearoa.
We wanted them to see Māori communities themselves as 20th and 21st century people, and we wanted them to see that Māori communities are by no means homogeneous, that you can't look in an anthropology book and make sweeping generalisations about Māori life. And that's tended to happen. We've been encapsulated within a framework of anthropological thought, which isn't real, not for Māori people, and probably never has been real. It's always been within the framework of Western viewpoint of us. And we were never like that in our own eyes, and we're not like that now.
The Taonga Māori Conference in 1990. 150 years after the treaty was signed, Maina wanted museums from around the world to discuss a new approach to partnership. Here's what Maina wrote in a book which accompanied the conference.
At a time when we were reflecting on our history since the arrival of the Europeans, the conference gave us the opportunity to begin to redefine an important relationship that had bound us to the rest of the world since the arrival of the Europeans: the presence of Taonga Māori in overseas museums. This presence has represented different things to different people. For Māori, it has been a source of sadness, an aspect of the loss of our own culture. After the Te Māori exhibition, our kaumātua said it was time for Māori to change the situation. It was time to keep our taonga warm again.
David Butt sat with Maina on the Cultural Conservation Advisory Committee, a national council set up to guide conservation. Te Māori had identified just how few Māori were working with our taonga. The conference was the committee's response.
It was 1990, of course, so that's some anniversary, wasn't it? They thought that they should do something. You have to be conscious of the flow of development from the 70s right through to see that change. People were increasingly becoming aware of those collections and trying to get access to them. And I think the members felt if we bring them here, we look after them and we tell them how important those taonga are to us, and we get to know them one-on-one. Then when we go, they'll remember their experience in New Zealand, and they will realise that they have to reciprocate that manaaki.
Maina Mackenzie died in 1997. She was only 67. What you're listening to is her speaking to RNZ in 1990, at the end of the conference.
In the Māori world, straight talking takes place and the words are laid down and left there, and we don't go away feeling bad. We go away feeling that we've begun something and maybe we have left a few questions to be answered.
Maina was decades ahead of her time. She speaks of the mamae she felt when thinking of taonga and overseas collections. She speaks of the way they've been framed and how Te Māori forced a rethink of that. We couldn't actually find much audio of Maina Mackenzie in the sound archives, just this one 10-minute interview. But fortunately, Manawatu Museum, now called Te Manawa, has quite the collection, a record of the decades of her work in boxes and on shelves. I needed to see it. I have just arrived in Palmerston North and am heading to the entrance here at Te Manawa, where I'm really excited to see the archive of one Maina Mackenzie. Hello. Yes, hi, hello, hi.
Hello, that was
Karis.
a good time.
Yes, hi, nice to meet you. I meet Karis Evans, who is the heritage curator here. She swipes me through upstairs. You can hear how excited I am. Collection stores are some of my favourite places to be. They are where history is palpable. The mauri of each taonga makes itself known. Rows of shelving with taonga, each with its own history, cared for by dedicated kaitiaki, with tapu and noa in mind. No food or drink in here. Karakia before we enter. They are our ancestors, our histories. Don't mind me, I'm just going to be holding this microphone in your direction as you're trying to move things around.
I want to get you to go down that shelf and
Okay.
just experience the boxes.
Yeah.
Because most of this is miners.
Really? Karis was responsible for the 2025 exhibition, Keeping the Taonga Warm, the legacy of Maina Mackenzie.
There's things like staff diaries from that. It's insane. There's everything. So yeah, if you step down and I'll follow you, hopefully there's enough room there. You can cold call someone, and if you say, I'm doing a project about Maina Mackenzie, they'll be like, oh, Maina Mackenzie, yep, drop everything.
Oh, amazing.
Because I guess they have that positive association with her.
I choose a couple of boxes and we sift through. Many of the boxes are from the bookstore owned by Maina's husband, Bruce, and now run by their daughter. Oh, wow. It's funny. Neither of us knew her, yet doing this, it feels like her presence is still around.
Official invitation to Te Hokinga Mai.
This unassuming figure who remains so revered. In a box, labelled Te Māori, I find.
Oh, look at that. Minutes of the Te Māori Management Committee meeting held at 16th floor Aurora House, The Terrace, Wellington, Friday the 4th of December, 1987. Long list of people present, and 3 of whom are women, and 1 of which is Maina Mackenzie. She was often the only wahine, or one of few involved in and around Te Māori.
Karis Evans.
We can now look back at Te Māori and see that it was very masculine focused, but in everything that Maina did, she was about balancing the masculine and the feminine. And with Te Māori, sort of, as I believe it was Maina that said that, you know, there'd been this curator go through and rank Māori art from good, better, best, instead of sort of understanding toi Māori from the parameters, the cultural parameters in which it was created, which inherently requires that balance of masculine and feminine. So us having a Raranga collection is an important extension of that worldview that she brought into the museum. Because we do have pieces of whare whakairo. And I think a wonderful thing about Maina is that while she was pushing the collection of colonial taonga, European taonga, she was also acquiring and then gifting to the collection pieces like the Geneva Grey Kete, and then building those relationships with the likes of Te Aturangi Nepia Clamp to generate new taonga that could then become museum pieces in the future. I think it's, I feel like she must have been holding all of that in her mind, right? She strikes me as someone who's probably quite premeditated and realised that that's what she was doing. She was drawing together sort of these different histories, but also establishing what taonga would be for the future.
And that's what's astonishing to me. These seeds that Maina planted, the change she hoped for, they're now a reality. Maina's vision came to pass, and you can see that in Karis. You can also see it in David Butts, one of many people who Maina mentored. He's retired now. I visit him at his Gisborne home. It wasn't the sunny, gizzy day I was hoping for, but after a warming coffee, David loves a brew much stronger than I can handle, we sit in his study. He himself went on to have a storied career. We speak for hours at his table, but when it comes to asking him about Maina, his recollections of her impact, her personality, you notice a distinct shift in his voice. All these years later, he's still so very fond of her. Her ability to challenge, her indomitable drive, her frankness, her generosity.
Then one day she said to me, you know, David, just remember, there are still a few of us above ground. And of course I realised that what I was doing and conceiving was all happening in my head, and I wasn't connecting it to people at all. So, you know, just gentle things like that you kind of remember. When she came over to the opening of Ngā Tukimata, and afterwards I was explaining to her, you know, about where the taonga had come from and how, you know, and she said to me, you know, this has been a wonderful opportunity for you. The kaumātua have lifted the corner of their cloak and let you have a look. But don't make the mistake to think that you're becoming an expert on kaununu. So, she could always kind of bring you back down to earth and lift you up again.
Miner's vision was clear.
Normally these kinds of things are all set in an office but by a group of people who bring in the Māori voice afterwards to give it some kind of authenticity. But in this case, the Māori voice was what started this off. So it's a different kind of way of going about doing something in what would have normally been a very structured Pākehā fashion. It's a new world for museums, hopefully, and the Māori people and our colleagues together.
Miner's work was often out of the spotlight, but her legacy is profound. She knew what was needed for our taonga, and she changed the world from Palmerston North. Pūtātara, Revolutions and Māori Art is presented by me, Matariki Williams, and the producer is Jamie Tahana. It's made with the support of the Creative New Zealand, New Zealand On Air and RNZ Arts and Culture Podcast Co-Fund. Strategic advisors are Yana Tenahu Owen and Rosabelle Tan. Thanks also to RNZ's Justin Gregory. Archival audio comes from the RNZ collection at Ngā Taonga Sound and Vision. A particular thanks to Steve Russell. A big mihi to the whānau of Maina Mackenzie and Te Manawa Museum for letting us explore the archives. The theme music is by Te Kahurere Moa Taumata and the graphic design is by Dexter Edwards. Check out our program page on the RNZ website. You can follow and listen to all our episodes wherever you get your podcasts.